Ryan Weathers puts the team on his back, and the Marlins get out of Chicago with a victory.
You are Locked On Marlins, your daily podcast on the Miami Marlins.
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Marlins. I'm your host, Jeremiah Geiger. I've been podcasting about the Marlins for 3 seasons now. Go hit me up on X at Jeremiah Geiger 2. And thank you for making Locked On Marlins your first listen of the day. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, which is your team every day. Don't forget to hit subscribe on the YouTube channel. Let me know your thoughts in the comments section and share the podcast. Share the podcast with your friends. And on today's show, Kyle Stowers. What more can he do? He is absolutely incredible. He's on his way to potentially be named to an all-star game, the first one in his career. He's on fire. Kyle Stowers led the team to victory, 2 home runs and a triple. Going to talk about Ryan Weathers. Weathers looked great in his return off the IL. Also talk about Clayton McCullough exuding confidence and trust in his guys by rolling out Jesus Tinoco in pretty much the exact same situation in the 9th inning. And this time, Tinoco got the job done. I loved what I saw from Clayton McCullough. And finally, I'm also going to talk about Rob Manfred and the decision to reinstate previous ineligible players back into baseball. So the likes of Shoeless Joe Jackson, Pete Rose are now eligible to be voted into the Hall of Fame. I'm going to give you my thoughts on that coming up later. Let's talk about Kyle Stowers. I remember yesterday's podcast, I talked a lot about him, and it's going to be more of the same because he deserves it. He is incredible. The turnaround from last season to this season, it's a night and day difference. It feels like I'm not watching the same player. Last year, Kyle Stowers would go up. You would throw 3 fastballs at the top of the zone. He'd swing and miss at all of them and walk back to the dugout. And you could see on his body language, just he was struggling. He had no confidence at the plate. He didn't have faith in his abilities. His mechanics were not allowing him to get to that specific pitch in general, the fastball. And coming into spring training, expectations were low. And now we're talking about Stowers power. If you're watching on YouTube, you see on the rundown there. And Kyle Stowers being an all-star. Which is a very real possibility. The all-star game is in about 2 months, a little less than 2 months. Stowers absolutely can be there. You look at the Savant page. Is this success sustainable? I think it is. Now, I'm not going to guarantee he's going to hit 300 all season. There is some swing and miss to his game. He is striking out at about a 30% clip. But everything else, the barrel rate, the bat speed, hard hit percentage, the walk percentage. He's drawing walks. He's battling at the plate and creating good at bats. He's not going up there just swinging at everything. And I like to see that because even though the strikeout percentage is there, his chase is about average. He's not going to go out there and just swing at everything and not draw his walks. No, he's up there. He's seen the ball really well. And then when he does see his pitch, that's where he attacks. He makes contact, and that contact is really hard. Yesterday's game, 2 homers and a triple. The second home run is the fastball, 92-mile-an-hour fastball in the inner half of the zone. That kind of inner upper quadrant if you're a left-handed batter. And he pulls it down the line and gets a home run. He doesn't usually pull those home runs like that. That's what the broadcast was saying. And then the triple he almost hit out as well. It's right off the wall, off the ivy, and he's fast enough to book it from home to third and get in with a triple. It was an incredible game. The Marlins needed that. They only had 6 hits in general. And 5 of those hits were extra bases. I talk about the slugging percentage and how the Marlins don't have that power. This was a game in which you didn't collect all those base hits just to leave runners on. The base hits you collected were doubles, triples, and home runs. 6 of them. Here's the list of hits. Xavier Edwards single, Kyle Stowers home run, Kyle Stowers home run, Kyle Stowers triple, Augustin Ramirez home run, Augustin Ramirez double. That was it. And the Marlins win and salvage a game against the Cubs by a score of 3-1. Would I have liked them to see score more? Sure. But you know what? When you have 5 extra base hits with 3 home runs, that feels good from an offensive perspective. I would have liked more guys to chip in, but Augustin Ramirez and Kyle Stowers looked really good. Augustin Ramirez, by the way, I talked about Kyle Stowers being a potential all-star. Augustin Ramirez, I'd be willing to bet, is going to be the National League Rookie of the Year. He's that good. I don't see right now anybody else who has the same talent profile as him that has a chance. You know, Bubba Chandler for the Pirates, he's a really good pitcher. He's got an electric arm, but he hasn't been called up yet. Augustin Ramirez is giving himself a nice little cushion in the National League Rookie of the Year running, which is great. I mean, I thought he was a good prospect, a really good prospect. I didn't expect that he would hit the ground running this fast and this early on in his career. I'm all there for it. It's absolutely awesome. But Kyle Stowers, I can't remember a player who struggled so badly to start his major league career for a good chunk of the season. You know, Kyle Stowers, it was a big enough sample size to have people wondering, you know, he's really not all that. He's not going to pan out to anything. Last season, he had over 200 plate appearances. Hit 208. On base percentage, 268 with an OPS of 601. It was awful. I don't remember the last time a player was, for the Marlins, started their career with that type of production. Just awful production. And then the next year completely flips the script and becomes arguably the team's best hitter. Let me know in the comment section if there's any players that I'm missing or that you can think of that started off their Marlins tenure awful, only for the next year to be one of the best players on the team. Coming up next, I'm going to talk to you about Ryan Weathers. He made his season debut, and he looked really good doing it. It's going to be huge for the Marlins rotation to have Ryan Weathers stay healthy, number one, and number two, pitch like he did last night. That's coming up right after this. Get the supplies you need from the site made for the skilled trades, Supply House. Whether you're in plumbing, HVAC, or electrical work, Supply House is the reliable way to order products online. Their easy-to-use website is packed with helpful resources and the latest product info to help you get the job done right. Plus, with a complete inventory of over 200,000 parts from over 400 top brands, you'll find exactly what you need, delivered fast from coast to coast. If you need help with an order, Supply House offers expert support and industry-leading service, so you'll always talk to a real person. And for trade professionals looking for an extra edge, their free Trade Master program offers exclusive perks like a dedicated phone line, free shipping, and discounts on every order. Thousands of skilled professionals are already taking advantage. Now it's your turn. So join the Trademaster program today at supplyhouse.com/TM and start ordering plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies with just a few clicks. Plus, use promo code SH5 for 5% off your first order. That's supplyhouse.com. Thank you for being part of the Locked On Marlins crew. If you're an everyday listener out there and you join me on YouTube or you listen on Spotify or Apple, wherever you get your podcasts, I really do appreciate it. Share the podcast with your friends. Maybe get a first-time listener to the show, and we can continue growing this as the season goes on. Ryan Weathers made his season debut last night. He got the victory, and he looked really good doing it. The biggest concern I had for Ryan Weathers going into this one was the control, because sometimes you'll see glimpses of Ryan Weathers struggle with command. And coming off of an injury, I felt like, the pitch count was going to stay fairly limited, and it did. But how was he going to handle a really good Cubs lineup and attack the zone? Was he going to walk a lot of batters? I have a really big problem against walking hitters. It's just such a preventable outcome. It's where the pitcher gives the opposing hitter a free base. We see a lot of pitchers struggle with that. Edward Cabrera, of course, for years. It's awful. Edward Cabrera, or Ryan Weathers, rather, looked really good. 5 innings. He only walked 1. And he gave up 2 hits. 1 hit was a homer. I can live with that. Sometimes that happens. You make a mistake pitch. But you know what? It didn't do any damage, ultimately, because he kept the rest of the traffic off the bases. He didn't allow those free passes. He didn't give up a ton of hard contact. Finishes the night at 76 pitches. So I predicted, I believe, about 80, 85, if I'm not mistaken, as like the max pitch count. So about 10 shy of that, which I think was reasonable. Working his way back from injury, 76 pitches for his first start back. I'll take that. I think the next step in his progression is to build him up to 90. If he can get to 90 pitches in his next start, which, by the way, is scheduled to come against these Cubs. And that's going to tell me a lot also. If he can go out there and have a really good outing against the Cubs again. Because for the most part, he dominated. He really didn't. The Cubs really had nothing going against Weathers. And I know Kyle Stowers kind of overtakes the storyline because he had such a good game. Augustine Ramirez had a really good game. But the return of Ryan Weathers is so huge for this rotation. I mean, we were looking at the start of the season with the rotation consisting of Connor Gillespie. We had who else was in there? I'm drawing a blank. Valente Bayozo. I really like Valente Bayozo. Cal Quantrill, Max Meyer, and Sandy Alcantara. Sandy Alcantara off to a rough start. Max Meyer, he's cooled down after a really good start. Valente Bayozo is just kind of up and down between AAA and the majors. The great news, because I do like Valente Bayozo, is due to his performance over the last few games. Valente Bayozo is staying on the major league team. That was something I did not expect. If you remember, I predicted that it would be simple. Bayozo would be sent down. Ryan Weathers would just take his place in the rotation. And to a degree, that's true. Ryan Weathers is going to take Valente Bayozo's spot in the rotation, but Bayozo is moving to the bullpen. He's earned that opportunity. And I absolutely love that. You're giving a guy who's done everything you've asked of him and more, the opportunity to stay in the majors, give him that new role as a long relief swingman, I would assume, and he's still going to be effective. He's still going to be effective for you out of the pen. I do like Beozo as a pitcher, and I think that's a good decision. The player who was optioned was Anthony Veneziano. He's a left-hander. That surprised me. The Marlins are down to just one left-hander in their pen. He doesn't have a ton of experience, and that's Cade Gibson. But we've seen Peter Bendix make these moves before in which you're a little bit surprised that he pulls the trigger on a couple of these players. But Veneziano, he really wasn't anything special. He was okay. There were times when I just was like, this guy's just plain not good. But I never thought they were going to option him straight out because he was the only lefty. And now it's Cade Gibson, who is on his second stint with the big league team this year. So, will the Marlins do anything to make another addition to the bullpen with a left-hander? I'm not sure. I think they should. I don't think it's wise to roll out with one left-hander who's pitched in a handful of major league games. I just don't think that's smart. And that's why I was surprised they sent down Veneziano. But he hadn't been pitching great, and the Marlins wanted to keep Beozo on the team, and that's what happened. So, Peter Bendix, that's a really good decision. Really like that. You're showing confidence in your pitcher, in Valente Beozo. Clayton McCullough also showed confidence in the game last night by leaving Jesus Tinoco or giving Jesus Tinoco the opportunity to once again, in the same situation when they blew the game, the same situation, you're up by 2 runs, to go out and close it. It showed confidence in his player. I absolutely love that. Who's the 9th inning guy? Maybe it is Jesus Tinoco. You know, bad games will happen. Robert Suarez the other day put up a horrible game against the Angels. First blown save of the season. Jeff Hoffman. I mean, these guys are elite closers. These games happen. And Clayton McCullough said, I want Tinoco to go close this out. He could have had Fauché. He could have had Bender. Could have waited, not brought them in the game, and saved one of them for the 9th. But he showed confidence and faith in his guy, Jesus Tinoco, and Tinoco shut the door. There would be no deja vu from the night before. Thought that was a really good move. It showed a lot of character and leadership from Clayton McCullough as a manager. Not a lot of people are going to talk about this, but that was a very underrated part of the game last night. Pete Rose and Shoeless Joe Jackson are among the players that have been reinstated into Major League Baseball. Rob Manfred made a groundbreaking decision, came out yesterday. I'm going to talk about that, give you my thoughts on the situation, and of course, you can always let me know your thoughts down in the comment section. I'm going to talk about the Rob Manfred decision to reinstate formerly ineligible players back into the game right after this. If you're watching on YouTube, hit that subscribe button, leave a comment, but also remember, if you're on the go, Locked On Marlins is with you wherever you get your major podcasts. All the podcast platforms, Locked On Marlins is there. Apple, Spotify, Amazon Music, you name it. Rob Manfred, the commissioner of baseball, made a decision to reinstate Shoeless Joe Jackson, Pete Rose, and other deceased players from the ineligible list. And what he said, I'm going to read the statement here. This was in a letter to Jeffrey Lenkov. He said, obviously, a person no longer with us cannot represent a threat to the integrity of the game. Moreover, it is hard to conceive of a penalty that has more deterrent effect than one that lasts a lifetime with no reprieve. Therefore, I have concluded that permanent ineligibility ends upon the passing of the disciplined individual, and Mr. Rose will be removed from the permanently ineligible list. So, it's not just Pete Rose. This wasn't only Pete Rose. It was Pete Rose, Shoeless Joe Jackson, and in total, his ruling that there's 16 players that are affected by this, and their names are now removed from the ineligible list. If you think of some of the biggest scandals in baseball history, I think of the Black Sox, 8 Men Out. If you've seen that film, it's a really good film. But Shoeless Joe Jackson's off that list. Eddie Cicotti. I'm probably butchering that name right there. But the big ones I want to talk about right now are Pete Rose and Shoeless Joe Jackson. I'm going to start with Shoeless Joe Jackson. Babe Ruth emulated his game at the plate after Shoeless Joe. Shoeless Joe Jackson was an incredible hitter, one of the best talents the game of baseball has ever seen. I don't want anybody to say, oh, you know what, it doesn't matter. That was such a long time ago. It matters. Talent matters. Without a doubt, Shoeless Joe Jackson is one of the best baseball players to ever live. He got caught up and involved in a scandal in which the White Sox threw the World Series to gamblers. The 1919 World Series. Very, very heavy-duty stuff. And all of them were banned from baseball for life, including Shoeless Joe Jackson. Now, did he actually throw the game? There's a lot of debate on that. I argue no. I've always maintained that he didn't. His stats throughout the entire series were the best out of anybody. And the story goes, Shoeless Joe Jackson didn't know how to read or write. So when the gamblers came up to him and asked him to sign something, sign this paper or whatnot, and he signs an X, can't really understand what he's signing, I don't believe Shoeless Joe Jackson threw that series. And I think it's great that he's been reinstated into the game and has an opportunity to now be named to the Hall of Fame where he belongs. Pete Rose, the subject of a lot of debate. Gambled, but he gambled on his own team. Now, we have seen over the last few years, gambling is becoming more normalized in professional sports. You see a lot of ads. You see a lot of partnerships. Back then, it was gambling. I mean, it still is. Gambling on your own team is forbidden and taboo. But I feel like the cultural norm surrounding gambling has shifted a little bit. And the average person isn't going to understand exactly how big of a deal what Pete Rose did was to the game. I think Pete Rose should be in the Hall of Fame. I'm going to say that right now. What he did as a player was phenomenal. He's one of the best hitters, 4,000 hits. He hustled. He played the game hard. I mean, we talk about players reaching 3,000 hits. Pete Rose finished with over 4,000 hits. It's a number that I doubt will ever be reached again. I think it's screwed up that Major League Baseball waited until he passed away, and the other players on this list, of course, who passed away, to publicly say, okay, you are reinstated into the game. You're now eligible for the Hall of Fame. I think that's a low blow. I think it's scummy. There are off-the-field incidents surrounding Pete Rose. I'm not going to talk about them on the show. Not going to get into that. But what I will say is that the game of baseball has a Hall of Fame. You have Cooperstown, and Shoeless Joe Jackson and Pete Rose both deserve to take their spot in the Hall of Fame. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section about the Manfred ruling. Should they have been left off the ineligible list? Should they have left on the ineligible list? Should they have been pulled off? What do you think about this ruling and the precedent that it is setting? And the other question that you're going to have to ask yourself, Hall of Fame voters are notoriously very picky. They make some crazy decisions. How Ichiro was not a Hall of Fame inductee unanimously. That itself right there should tell you a lot. Hall of Fame voters, I don't trust them. I don't trust them at all. I don't trust them to do the right thing. And there's going to be people out there, some of the baseball writers, some of the older writers, who are going to, in my opinion, going to continue to show vengeance and try to punish the name of Pete Rose in particular for what he did, even though he's long been gone and he should be in the Hall. He didn't bet. He didn't bet against his own team. He didn't throw games. I know that's what Shoeless Joe Jackson, that's the whole thing surrounding him, but I will continue to maintain Shoeless Joe Jackson did not throw games in the 1919 World Series. There's a lot of research you can do. I encourage you guys to do it if baseball history interests you. And then you have to also consider the fact that these baseball writers who vote for the Hall of Fame, they haven't allowed Bonds in the Hall of Fame and the steroid era of players. How are they going to handle gambling? The gambling era, I guess, the gambling situations. It's a lot different, though. Steroids affected what you do on the field. To be quite honest with you, Pete Rose, nothing he did while gambling on his own team to win, by the way, nothing he did affected his play on the field. So I don't know if they're going to take that into consideration or not. The Marlins have an off day on Thursday. They head back to Florida, and they get to face the Tampa Bay Rays in the Citrus Series. It's going to be a good one. I'm going to see Max Meyer on the mound. Sandy Alcantara is going to be throwing also. Needs Sandy Alcantara to have a good start. He's got to lock in. And like I said, with the White Sox last game, he struck out 8. Let's see if he can bring that strikeout stuff once again against Tampa Bay. And you can get a series victory. Max Meyer and Sandy Alcantara leading the charge. Right now, the Marlins are 10 games under 500. They haven't gone completely out of it, but they're still just kind of hovering in mediocrity right now. And they're starting to play poor baseball like we saw in Chicago against the White Sox and against the Cubs the first 2 games. It would be good to go out there and get a couple wins, Who knows? Maybe you get a sweep. That's going to do it for today's edition of Locked On Marlins. I appreciate you guys all for listening, and until next time, stay safe, stay locked on, and let's go fish.